morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is J.R. Moore coming to you live from deep in the mountains of the Missouri Ozarks. On Wednesday, the 4th day of September, year of our Lord 2019, welcome to the John Moore Show. We begin our shows with something very important. That would be the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our prep tip today, I want to encourage everybody to work on their physical conditioning, both your aerobic strength and your anaerobic strength. If you don't know what the two are, you need to find out. Both are very important. Both are not optional. And every one of us, including myself, including my grandson who is playing his last year of college football, we could all improve our physical conditioning. That's your prepper tip of the day. We have a patient waiting in the green room, my friend, Professor James McCanney. Professor McCanney taught astrophysics at Cornell University. He taught mathematics at Cornell University. He's a advanced amateur archaeologist, advanced to the point where he consults with governments on various archaeological matters. Weekly radio talk show host, an accomplished author, having written, I believe, now 11 books with, I'm sure, another one or two or more on the way. And his website is linked on my links page at thelibertyman.com. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning, John. How is everybody today?
Well, no complaints, sir. We're getting some very mild weather here, finally, and no rain for 10 days. We've had the most rain in my part of the country since 1938, and it's a sight to behold. Well, Jim, the big news, of course, that you and I are going to talk about is this Hurricane Dorian. Just before the show, you were telling me that the storm lingered over the Bahamas, over this landmass, for, was it 4 days? And your thoughts on that, and is there any precedence for that anybody's aware of?
No, it was supposed to be moving into Florida Monday, and it just sat on the Bahamas for 4 days. It's now allegedly moving off, but you could see the storm being dragged back and dragged back and dragged back with the laser satellites. I mean, this is, I couldn't believe it. At first, all of the hype was that they were going to drag it into Mar-a-Lago. But then it just sat on the Bahamas. And I don't believe any of the rumors, that there was kind of like...
Well, I heard the same thing, that people who hate President Trump thought, wouldn't it be great if the storm hit Mar-a-Lago, which would mean President Trump would get a really big check and Mar-a-Lago would be better than new when it was finished.
Yeah.
The insurance company would pay him a really big check and it would be nicer than it ever was. So that would not have been cause harm to the president. It would have improved the president's situation, wouldn't it?
Yeah, to give him a lot of money to spend in that region. But the fact is that storm was meant to destroy the Bahamas, and it was brought right through there. It came over Puerto Rico, of course. And if you look at what Maria did, Hurricane Maria, how long ago was that? Was that 2 years ago now?
Something like that, right.
But anyway, that storm was designed to depopulate the Caribbean islands, which it did. The majority of, a lot of people moved away from Puerto Rico.
Well, let's look at the Bahamas, and we talked about this briefly before the show. Why would the powers that be, if they wanted to cause harm to the Bahamas, what would the reason be? My belief is if they wanted to cause harm to the People's Republic of China, they would hit the Bahamas because China has recently built the world's largest container port facility, a deep water port specifically meant to handle those 20-foot and 40-foot containers that everything is shipped here from China in. And I don't know what damage was done to it, but there's no doubt damage was done to anything and everything connected to the ocean, isn't there?
Yeah, but then again, look at exactly that point, that China, and understand, too, that a lot of the people in Washington and in the deep state are controlled by China. The idea that Russia is controlling everything, a country with the economy the size of Italy, is absolutely absurd. China is in control of a lot, and it would behoove the people in charge of the effort to move China in there to get rid of all the people in the Bahamas, and that's what they've
Oh,
done.
now, well, that would be now. You know, I had not considered that, and now that I have considered it, they can rebuild the port facility probably rather
Yes,
quickly.
yes,
But the people being gone now, this is another one of China's goals, of course. And Jim, if you have not read the transcript, there's a transcript on my website of a speech given by the top Chinese general, meant for his own people, not meant for anybody outside the Chinese military. But one of their goals is to depopulate the entire Western Hemisphere, basically, the United States in particular. But if they wanted to depopulate the Bahamas for their own purposes, this would be the way to do it, wouldn't it?
well, absolutely. That's the first thing that came to my mind when we were talking about China moving into the Bahamas. Is you have a native population there that's been there, since the slave trade, and they want those people out of there. That's what happened to Puerto Rico. That's what happened to the Virgin Islands. That's what's going on. I mean, that is exactly what's going on. They literally tried to do that to Florida a number of years ago, where they had 4 hurricanes come into Florida all at once, and there was one that I happened to be in Florida that I had to run from, and it failed. It came up the west side of Puerto Rico, the west side of Florida, something a hurricane has never, ever done before. It made a more than 90-degree right turn to come up the west side of Florida. So at any rate,
I remember that. We were doing our broadcast when you were dealing with it. I recall that very, very distinctly. Yes.
Yep. And that failed because what they didn't realize is it dumped all its water as it came across the Florida Keys, and even though they maintained the wind strength, it had no momentum because it was a dry storm. What happened in the Bahamas is they had Cat 5 level hurricane for 4 days with the water. So they've learned how to keep that thing going. And if you looked at the eye during those 4 days, it just kept being dragged back and dragged back and dragged back to just sit on the Bahamas. There's no question that storm was manipulated.
The few minutes I've had to think about this, your premise has a lot more veracity than my premise of wanting to cause harm to the container port facility. Your premise has legs, and now 4 days of winds that were from what were the sustained winds for 4 days?
Oh, they were like a cat F4 an F4 tornado, the equivalent consistently over and over again. And I want to make it clear, China did not control the laser satellites. It's the deep state in the United States that controls those satellites.
They have conspirators that work together with them. Of course they do.
Yeah.
I'm not that familiar with home and commercial construction on the Bahamas. My belief, however, is very few homes or commercial structures would survive without severe damage, if not completely wiped out, that kind of event. What do you think?
Well, the Bahamas for a long time has been, hurricane central. And so they are built for hurricanes, but the amount of rain, what happens in a hurricane is it rips the roof off, and then all the rain does all the rest of the damage. And so you will not find many roofs in the Bahamas anymore. And so I don't care what kind of structure it was, it didn't have a roof, and therefore everything inside has been totally destroyed.
Right.
I've seen helicopter views, and it's flooded, and that's the big issue. I've been in the Bahamas, you probably have, but there's no elevations there. So
I'll be in the Caribbean for the first time this coming February, but the combination of water and near tropical temperatures means mold growth begins in hours, doesn't it?
Yeah, and so the place is not livable anymore, and that's the whole point. They've committed uh, the death toll. It's amazing the death toll isn't like 100%, but the idea is that majority of those people will not be able to rebuild or be able to live there. That's what we saw in Haiti. We've seen these type of genocidal types of movements, and in Haiti with the earthquake, uh, the the effect was the same. Remember, they found the Clintons smuggling little kids out of there for
Right.
their pedophile network,
Right.
and of
Right.
course
Right.
that never went anywhere.
No.
So anyway, that's all I have to say about that particular incident. But there's no question that that storm was manipulated and continually dragged back, and that I don't know what level of awareness Trump has of this, but his comment about nuking hurricanes, if he said that, that I think was a made-up story, but according to him, he never said that. But isn't that interesting that that whole story blew up right before this storm?
Right. Right.
And that secondly, that he does not have information about, number one, who's doing that. And then you have NOAA, the National Weather Service, coming out and so-called debunking the idea of nuking a hurricane. In other words, discussing so-called ways of stopping hurricanes as being ridiculous, when in fact NOAA is tier 2 science, and you have the tier 1 science manipulating the storm, with the tier 2 science running the news media.
Right. Right. Well, the storm continues, and I don't know where they're predicting it's going to go next. Maybe they'll go back out to sea, and maybe it'll go back to the Bahamas. I guess that's possible too, isn't it?
Loop around like we've seen them do with back in the early
Right.
2000s when they first put the laser satellites in business. They were looping the hurricanes around, doing loop-de-loops, and then bringing them into Florida.
Yeah, they're manipulating that hurricane like it was a sports car in a parking lot. It was pretty funny to watch. You and I talked about that at the time it was going on, and you could see it. You could see the radar track, and it was just amazing and astounding, wasn't it?
Right. So anyway, the thing is to, we're dealing with, I'll kind of segue into a different topic here, but there's an amazing war going on, and people don't realize that the deep state is really gearing up for complete fascism in the United States and worldwide. It's doing it through Google. It's doing it through social media. I want to bring up this topic. A guy I know, I wouldn't claim he's a friend of mine, just an acquaintance, but Bart Sibrel, he's a guy for decades, has been one of the main voices saying NASA did not go to the moon. He was demonetized the other day from YouTube for his videos, and he's not. There's nothing vile. There's nothing. And he's been there for decades. All of a sudden, he's demonetized, and he sent out a message. But this is the kind of thing, now we have science by a decree that you can't say anything bad about NASA, or especially since their, when was it, July celebration of the 50-year anniversary of Apollo going to the moon. YouTube has absolutely been cleansed. Places like Wikipedia have been cleansed of anything hinting negative. If you do a search on did NASA go to the moon, all you're going to get is a bunch of recent rah-rah, NASA did all this stuff. And, complete ridiculous, a lot of it recently made up footage, created footage that you can see was created in a laboratory, which they can do right now. They can put faces on people, and they have now supposedly very high quality 4K video, supposedly taken in 1968, of astronauts getting dressed in a like a room, getting ready for the Apollo launches. And I mean, it's just absurd what they're coming out with. NASA has hired companies to put equipment on the moon. What's that all about? What is, these secret contracts that NASA has to put stuff on the moon? Anyway, the level of fascism that's going on today is just incredible.
All right, well, let's define fascism for people. Fascism is a cooperative effort between large businesses and government to accomplish mutual goals. That's what fascism is. And, of course, the difference between fascism and communism is, under communism, the state owns the means of production, which would be mines and factories and farms. Under fascism, the private sector owns the means of production, the mines, factories, and farms. They both use, however, similar methods to accomplish their goals, don't they, Jim?
Well, yeah, but there have been cases of fascism, though, where the industries control the government also, and they work through the government, like the Mussolini or Hitler or Stalin.
Well, the intent under German fascism, the intent of the industrialists was to they basically recruited Hitler to be a person who could unite the country with a nationalist theme. What they didn't count on was the psychosis of Hitler, and he got away from them. He acquired power that they could not control. That's why they attempted to assassinate him at least 3 times, because he was a wild card that they did not anticipate what this man would do once he acquired power that they couldn't stop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a complicated story.
Oh, it is. It is.
But anyway, we are headed into that kind of era right now.
Here's our break. We got a break. Call numbers 800-313-9443.
It's happening, ladies and gentlemen. We here at RBN are working with Front Sight Firearms Training Institute to bring our audience the best in combat, tactical, and defensive firearms training. Whether you're a private citizen who is new to firearms or you have a concealed weapon permit and want a level of training that surpasses what you've received from your local gun range, Front Sight provides priceless education and skills taught by seasoned law enforcement, military, and private citizen instructors to levels that far exceed law enforcement and military standard. With nearly 1 million responsible citizens trained from every town, city, and state from across the United States, Front Sight has bolstered the Patriot movement to a whole new level. Contact Dan Sutterfield by phone at 573-762-2356 or 573-465-2356 or shoot him an email at domedan, DOMEDAN, at hotmail.com. This is a limited time opportunity. Don't miss it.
All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. J.R. Moore here on Wednesday, the 4th of September. We're going on a cruise. Everything will be all fixed up by the time we go. They get in and take care of all that stuff real quick. We won't be going to any hurricane-devastated areas. We'll be leaving Florida on Saturday, the 9th day of February, returning the 16th. And we'll be visiting several ports of call. We'll be at St. Martin, Puerto Rico, and a private island that's owned by the Royal Caribbean Cruise Line. Get the details at my website at thelibertyman.com. If you don't have internet access and you want a nice full-color brochure mailed to you, just give our cruise director a call. That's Betsy Murphy, the wife of my very dear friend Ben Murphy. Betsy will be glad to mail you a full-color brochure. Her telephone number is 636-530-9502. I say again, 636-530-9502. Visiting Professor James McCanney. His website is linked to my links page at thelibertyman.com. Jim, you have not one, but two weekly radio shows. Tell people how they can listen live to the archives, please, sir.
Yes, John. Every Thursday evening at 6 p.m. Central Time, the James McCanney Science Hour at the Crossroad has been airing since around for about the last 20 years. And commercial free, and all the archives on my webpage, jmccsci.com. Also, there are many ways to listen, which are listed on my webpage. But then the Paidcast, which is another weekly deep dive into scientific topics, that is $3.95 a month, less than the cost of a cup of coffee. And right now I'm producing my 100-week series on education, from preschool, K-12, and university level education. So that's in about week 8 right now. Just getting going on that.
All right, good. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you can get an education by listening to Jim's broadcast. I encourage people to listen to Jim's broadcast, and I encourage people to get and read all his books. Jim has formatted all the books so that they are the same size, with the same color covers. They fit real nicely together on your bookshelf, and it's a good collection that will be a university level education that you do not need to have a university level education to be able to both read it and enjoy it, right, Jim? Your books.
Exactly. Yeah, it's written really. I have people who are PhDs in physics, chemistry, and beyond, professionals of all sorts, engineers, people in all walks. I have NASA scientists who I've talked to, employees at NASA who are very ardent followers of my work, and it's written for the public, so anybody can understand this.
That's right. That's right. So there's your heads up, ladies and gentlemen. If you really want to know what's going on, people think that they can educate themselves by watching YouTube videos, which there's some value there. Don't get me wrong. But if you really want to know what's going on with astrophysics, you need to read Jim's books. And there's a lot of disinformation out there, isn't there, Jim?
Oh, it's unbelievable how these medias like YouTube have been just infiltrated just horribly by CIA-controlled entities. It's just absolutely absurd. They have taken over the mind of the public. And if I just got an email from a guy referring me to people who copy my work and asking me my opinion. And it's just, and these people are being supported by money under the table from the CIA, to just basically destroy what I've done with just nonsense, absolute nonsense. And that's what you get on YouTube. I always tell people, if you want to learn how to fix your bike, go to YouTube. If you want to learn about science, don't go to YouTube. Right.
I learned from YouTube yesterday how to properly place a connector on the end of a piece of coax. And
there you go.
And it was just what I needed, and it worked out perfectly. And a buddy of mine, he calls it YouTube University because that's what he uses YouTube for. In fact, my son-in-law learned how to repair the family dryer for drying clothes. He's a bright guy, but he has mechanical aptitude of a field mouse. But he learned from YouTube how to do this, and he got it done. He fixed the family dryer, so my daughter, his wife, can dry the family clothes and not have to pay a repairman to get it done. Well, let's move on from there, Jim. There's lots of things that are going on. What else is on your radar this morning?
Well, I just want to reiterate how Trump is, in a sense, flailing in just a sea of misinformation. And, I'm not sure how you can run this country and not understand the breadth and depth of the deep state. Right now, all of their attempts to muddy him up have failed, but they're very much at work in the background.
Here's our break. We'll be right back.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Here at Front Sight, my experience has been amazing. I've been here now 2 days. I have a 2-day course. I have a 4-day course. Because of my schedule, I took a 2-day course. And just learning so much about the operation of a firearm, the safety of a firearm, how to hold it properly, how to shoot it, how many times to shoot. So much stuff that I had no idea about. The instructors were patient. They were very calm. They recognized that people are inexperienced, and I certainly am and was better now than I was 2 days ago. But they take your time. You can ask the dumbest question, and Lord knows I asked a number of them, and they very patiently responded. So you just know a lot more about safety, about protecting yourself and protecting your loved ones, which is what this is all about. I took the course with my girlfriend, Nina. It was a lot of fun. And one of the things that they do is they have you train with somebody else like Nina. Nina's behind me. We both hear the same instruction. And so if I miss something, she can correct me. If she misses something, I can correct her. It also makes you feel more relaxed because you're with somebody you know and you're with another person who knows about as much or about as little as you know. And so when they fumble around and you're watching them, you don't feel quite as stupid if you fumble around. You can also watch somebody get better and better as you've gotten better and better. So you have some sort of bar so you can tell how much better you're getting. The other thing is it's just a collegial atmosphere. Nobody felt pressured. Nobody felt stressed. Nobody was screamed at. And some people had been here before. Others were coming here for the very first time. It was a lot of fun and a lot of different people coming from different parts of the country. And I met a lot of interesting people since I've been here. One of the reasons I wanted to come to Front Sight is because I'm a big proponent of the Second Amendment, which is the right to keep and bear arms. People don't really quite understand what the Second Amendment means often. I learned the difference between the kinds of firearms that civilians use that are protected by the Second Amendment and those that are not. The other thing is, what this place shows you is that the Founding Fathers got it right when they felt that the best way to secure a guarantee against a tyrannical government is an armed citizenry. And everybody here is armed. Yet people are responsible. They know what they're doing. They know how to use firearms. And there was no sense of danger whatsoever here. I think that's what the Founding Fathers thought. They thought that everybody, ages, I think it was 17 to 45 or so, were part of the citizen militia, the citizen army, not government army, but citizen army, in order to protect against a tyrannical government. And it shows you in an environment right here at Front Sight that people who are armed, who are responsible, are in fact safe people and can make the environment even more safe. One of the great things about Front Sight, assuming that, for example, you're a teacher and you are thinking about carrying concealed, they will simulate what it's like for a bad guy to come into a classroom so the teacher can have a sort of real-world type of experience and know how to respond and know how to react. He also will provide a free course for any teacher who wants to take one. Come here and you'll see for yourself. There's a lot of stuff you don't know. So I urge anybody who's got a firearm, anybody who's thinking about getting a firearm, to come to Front Sight and take a course.
All right, we are back. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back. J.R. Moore here on Wednesday, the 4th day of September. My website is thelibertyman.com. Not only will you find Professor McCanney's website linked there, but you'll find lots of interesting things. I know many of you, most likely most of you, like to keep up on what's going on in the world. We have a section, if you scroll down, we've got blocks of 3 laid out there, the whole new website. If you haven't been there the past 6 months, everything's new. Open source intelligence. Open source intelligence. A friend of mine, retired counterintelligence agent, he puts this together every day of the week, and we update it every day of the week. If you want to stay up to speed on what's going around the planet with open source intelligence, this is where you do it, right there at my website. And to the left of that is the English translation of the top Chinese military general and what their goals are. Very scary stuff. And just to the right of that is a Navy map, the map I worked with the Navy veterans to recreate that's been shown in classified briefings since 1979 of the United States with different coastlines and an inland sea. Also, of course, my website, you'll find energy clinics for sale. I use mine every night. I've been real active around the ranch this past week, working on different projects, working to get my new office all squared away, go to bed with minor aches and pains, wake up pain-free after a great night's sleep. That's what I do every night. You want to do that? Well, this is how you do it. You get yourself an energy cleaner, get a mattress pad to go with it, get that mattress pad on the bed, get it connected together, and that's all you got to do. That's basically it. Energy cleaner is $285, shipping included, American zip codes. The mattress pads vary in price depending on what you need. Everything's right there for sale at my website. When you place your order, don't worry about the signal memo you get that it hasn't gone through. I take care of it manually. We got some issues we're dealing with there. And also keep in mind I have a 90-day money-back guarantee. Toll-free hour line for the energy cleaner and mattress pads. Here it is, twice slowly. 800-592-9543. I say again, 800-592-9543. The call number here at Republic Broadcasting, if you got a question or comment for Professor McCanny, is 800-313-9443. Let's continue, Jim.
Yeah, John, you had the add-on about front sight, and I encourage, I'm not sure when you first were introduced to firearms, John. They were around...
About age 8.
Right. They were around my environment, I'll just put it that way. My grandfather, I won't be specific, but he was in the public service, let's put it that way, with dealing with arms. So he had arms, he had an arms collection that was world class. So I grew up with all kinds of guns hanging on the walls everywhere. And so anyway, I was introduced to guns at a very early age and learned how to use them. I took gun training when I was a youth with my friends, and we all learned how to handle guns, and we all had guns. So anyway, it's something that a responsible person should know. In fact, I just saw where Kroger's encourages people to carry guns in its stores.
Well, good for Kroger. That's all I can say is good for Kroger.
So it'd probably be a bad place to try a shooting.
Well, that's the intent. One of our local banks, the entire family I had for concealed carry training, they removed the signs telling people not to carry guns into the banks anymore. The bank president said, "John, I think we want more guns in here, not less."
Right.
Jim, we got a caller in hold. Kyle in Montana. Good morning, Kyle.
Good morning, gentlemen. Professor McCanny, I had a question for you that I've been thinking about for a little bit, and I don't understand exactly how this works out. So if we're in sort of a solar minimum, okay, which is what everybody seems to say, well, why is it it's been like in the low to mid 80s here, and when it's direct sunlight, it feels so incredibly hot. And I was wondering how the solar minimum has, if that's correct, has so much to, why is it that the sun feels so much more intense?
Yeah, that's a good question. By the way, you didn't say where you were or what part of the country, Oh, I don't need a street
Montana.
address.
I'm in northwest Montana.
What elevation?
About 3,500 feet.
Yeah, okay. So you're up above. By the way, the sun's output has changed quite a bit, and it's a lot hotter in the UV. You should be wearing protective clothing. And the higher you go, once you're at 3,500 feet, your getting up to fairly thin atmosphere, so the atmosphere is not blocking the ultraviolet. Plus, the sun is putting out a lot more. So the sun is basically emitting what we call black body radiation at around 6,000 degrees, but the component that's coming out that's ultraviolet is much hotter. And so, yes, in fact, anybody that's in the sun should have protection. And I don't like creams. I don't like UV protection creams. You should be wearing clothing with long sleeves, gloves, and a hat that covers the back of your neck and around in your, especially your face, where the more delicate tissue is.
Okay, so does this
just
solar
I'm
minimum?
Sorry. I'm sorry. Get back to your question about solar minimum. Yeah, there's really no relationship between solar minimum and solar output. That's related to the magnetic field, and there have been claims that somehow sunspot cycles or sunspots affect our weather, and there's never been any relationship ever found. There have been some idiots running around jumping up and down on the internet trying to make such claims, and scientifically there's no relationship between severe weather like right now, hurricane. That's actually another point about this hurricane. There's no power source for it to sit there for 4 days over the Bahamas at Cat 5 or Cat 4, whatever it was. But anyway, very few people understand anything about the sun, and I work in that, you might call it industry, or that part of science, and I go to scientific meetings, and pretty much science in general is clueless about the effects of the sun, other than the work that I've done showing that hurricanes, in fact, are powered by electric fields, and electric currents, not some kind of heat that comes in from the sun. But anyway, there's really no relationship between solar cycle and solar energy or solar output, etc. It's kind of you might think if we went into a solar minimum, the sun would be cooler or something like that, and that's not the case.
Well, they say that the solar minimum is going to cause much more brutal winters. Is that then not true also?
No, I don't know. Yeah. Who's ever saying that, just smoking some of that funny stuff. No, I see people making predictions all the time, and people have computer models and magnetic reconnection. There's all kinds of ridiculous science that goes around dealing with the sun. And, but there's none of it that really has any validity. The sun, first of all, the sun's energy is up in its atmosphere. It's not in the core. So every model that exists in standard science is wrong right from the beginning. So anyway, the understanding the sun is something very, we're a long ways from understanding the sun.
So, all right, if we're like, I think I even heard you say that you think we're going into like a mini ice age. If that is true, you didn't say that.
No, never would say that in a million years.
Okay.
I don't know.
So you don't think Go ahead.
I've seen people recently making those predictions. People made predictions all the time, and they're wrong all the time. And every now and then, somebody might be right about something. It's like what they call spaghetti predictions. There's 22 computer models for where hurricanes will go, and one of them will probably be right. Not the same one every time, but if you make enough predictions, somebody's going to be right.
Okay, so then,
if somebody says it's going to get warmer, they might be right up to a certain point, and if somebody says it's going to get cooler, they'll probably be right up to a certain point. and can probably find data to support their case, both of them.
All right, so let's go back to that hurricane just for a second. If it is, you said electrically sort of controlled, is it possible then that HARP or one of those other things could actually control that?
Well, let's go to HARP. HARP has not been working in any capacity for probably 10 years. And when I talk about the laser satellites, that's what they are. They're laser satellites. And that's what they're using to control hurricanes. So don't even mention HARP. That's a defunct science that, it's World War II science. And it never really worked. It really never did anything.
Okay. All right. So do you think that that hurricane then was controlled with these laser satellites?
Well, I know it was. Yeah. Yeah, you can see, that's when I was talking with John, you could see it being pulled back and pulled back. They put the laser on the side they wanted to move to because the storm itself is being powered by the electrical discharge between the air above the surface of the ocean and the ionosphere. And so if you can cause that current to move over in one direction, that's the direction it's going to go in. So that's why the lasers are able to enhance the storm power and move it in a given direction. And you can see that. You can see the eye being pulled back and pulled back and pulled back repeatedly.
Okay.
Interesting.
Kyle, we really do. We got other callers here, and we do thank you
for
your
okay.
call, Kyle. Appreciate it. Next, we go to Jerry in Texas. Good morning, Jerry.
Good morning, Jim and John. I think Jim pretty much answered some of my questions on the deal with HARP and manipulation. But is there any ionization manipulation being done by our powers that shouldn't be today, Jim?
By what?
By our government, by these rogues, if you will.
Well, that's what I said. This is, the satellites are being controlled by, a group within the U.S. military. That's what's going on. The Russian scientists I work with, this has been known about since the mid-1990s. Russian scientists went to the United Nations and demanded this be classified as weapons of warfare, that weather manipulation using satellites should be classified as weapons. And the United States would not do it. The press, including the science press in the United States, has completely blocked this out and substitutes with the nonsense that comes out of NOAA and the National Hurricane Prediction Center. This is just nonsense that's been going on for literally decades now.
Okay, well, the reason I'm asking, I've been a year ago now, I got my ham license, radio license, and they're talking about solar maximum, solar minimum, and the HF radio is dependent on the activity, supposedly the sunspots and the ionosphere, so far as reflecting or defect, and I guess the radio signals of high-frequency radio frequencies back to Earth. And it got me to wondering about some of this stuff that they had started doing with experimenting with HARP and
stop saying HARP. Why do you keep repeating HARP? I said, don't say HARP anymore. HARP never worked, and it doesn't work now, and they don't even use it now. So anyway, do you have any other questions? Yeah. Let's move on, John.
Anything else, Jerry?
Okay. I was just wondering if they could, even with the satellite technology, they could interfere with the radio frequencies of that is out there, so far as communication.
No, the answer is no, because the shortwave, which my show is broadcast on shortwave, is a very broad signal that goes out. It's not a beam; it's a broad signal, and it bounces off the ionosphere around the world. That's why you can hear it on the other side of the world. But anyway, no, it's not something that you would manipulate with a laser satellite.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you. Y'all
Okay,
have
thanks
a good rest of the day. Uh-huh.
Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate the call. We got a break coming up. We'll start with our next caller, John in Texas. Good morning, John.
If I could digress a bit from the main subject,
You need to go off your speakerphone there, John.
okay, speakerphone off. I would like to ask you one thing about what did the Johnson administration have? You know what? Could I ask you about a speech that was made in 1958 before Congress by Senator Lyndon Johnson?
Well, we'll get back to this after the break. Everybody stay tuned.
Public Broadcasting Network depends on listener support of our advertisers and of our sponsors. We'd like to especially thank all of you who have taken advantage of our fundraiser with FrontSight Bonus. Those who are now FrontSight members, please train as soon as possible for your sake and for that of our nation. And please consider sharing your training and what you've learned when you arrive home. Republic Broadcasting Network has to stop promoting this fundraiser on air and on the website in just a few days. Dr. Ignatius Piazza, president of FrontSight, made a gracious exception to his no media rule for us at Republic Broadcasting Network. Thank you, Dr. Piazza. And once you've been to FrontSight, feel free to call your favorite host and share your experience on the air. We can continue this fundraiser without media help, but it'll be totally up to the listeners to spread the information. Please call Dan Sutterfield in Missouri at 573-465-2356, 573-465-2356. That's 573-465-2356.
All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Jaron Moore here on Wednesday, the 4th of September. John, what speech was made by Senator Johnson that you want us to comment on?
Lyndon Johnson, back when he was before he got to be president, it gave the true reason for the space program. He said
Go ahead.
Said that one of the reasons was control of the weather. And there were several things he mentioned. He said one of them was control of the weather, and it lies somewhere in outer space. That was in 1958.
Okay. Well,
that was
we'll
before they even launched Mercury.
We'll answer your question. Thank you, John. Thank you for the call. I was not aware of that speech, but it sounds like Senator Lyndon Johnson revealed something there, didn't he, Jim?
Well, since and during World War II, there was a lot of effort to control weather, and they were doing all kinds of things. Of course, weather, if you can manipulate weather in a battle situation, you can control things. And, as a method of, in fact, historically, there's all kinds of examples where weather made a great difference, not to mention things like the siege of Leningrad by the Germans, or, there's 1,000 stories based on weather or weather conditions. So controlling the weather is militarily very important. So it wouldn't surprise me that in the 50s, a decade after the end of World War II, that somebody would talk about control of the weather.
Right.
So at any rate, yeah.
Well, it's no surprise at all. Okay. Well, Jim, we're down to about the last 2 minutes here. What words of wisdom do you want to leave with our listeners this week, sir?
Just want to remind people interested in the wing generator, we're taking orders for the small ones. We're working with the 2, 3, and 5 kilowatt models right now. And so there's a demand for those. And the other thing I want to mention is that when the people have to fill out a questionnaire, some people write in and say, well, I think I just want a 5 kilowatt. Well, I don't sell like that. We have to spec out what your needs are, and then we tell you what you need. And if you can't afford it, then we don't move ahead. But we spec out based on what people need, not what they think they need. And
right.
So at any rate, but the size that we're working with are anywhere between 3 and 50 kilowatt models. And also, we're always looking for investors that have money in the $2 to $5 to $10 million range, angel investors. So you never know who's listening out there, who knows somebody that can refer to somebody else. So anyway, keep us posted.
Well, that sounds good, Jim. I appreciate it. Well, we'll be watching this storm and see what it does next. Thank you.
Exactly.
Have you back next Wednesday. Appreciate it, Jim. Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Top of our break. We'll be back with Jeff Nyquist. Stay tuned. All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. J.R. Moore here on Wednesday, the 4th day of September. Prepper tip of the day. I want to encourage all of you to work on your physical conditioning, both your aerobic strength as well as your anaerobic strength. They're both equally important. Most American men, I should say, most of the time, focus on anaerobic strength to the neglect of their aerobic strength. You need to have a balance, ladies and gentlemen, both. They're both just as important. And I encourage everybody to do that. All right, we have patient waiting agreement with my friend Jeff Nyquist. Jeff is a gentleman who began a quest more than 20 years ago to become very knowledgeable to the point where, in my opinion, he should have his own cubicle somewhere in the West Wing advising the President of the United States on policy matters regarding the threat of international communism, which has wormed its way into the highest levels of our government, unfortunately, and that is really what the deep state is, quite frankly. And we're going to be talking about that. Jeff's website is jrnyquist.com. There's a link to my links page at thelibertyman.com. Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning, John.
Well, sir, you forwarded me your most recent article. Very well done. Thank you, sir. We're going to be talking about that. These articles that you write, they may look rather simplistic on the face of it, but I know the level of work that goes into them, and it's a lot of work and a lot of research because you make sure all your I's are dotted and T's are crossed, don't you?
Yes, it is a lot of work. You're right. I actually worked on that article for 4 months, so because I was trying to explain things simply. And it's very hard to explain things simply.
It is. What you're doing is explaining complex matters in a simplistic way that doesn't leave anything out. To get people, my belief is to get people interested to the point where they'll do further research on their own and perhaps read Diana West's newest book titled The Red Thread. And that's one of your goals in writing articles, to encourage people to get Diana's latest book and read Diana's latest book, isn't it, sir?
Yes, it is, because the devil's in the details, and she's brought forth several case studies of the instigators in this Russia collusion hoax, and showing that they are socialists. There's an ideological driver behind this, and that the deep state indeed is a communist project. and that it is a very treacherous project because the people who are themselves communists or socialists are the ones that are in favor of helping Moscow and Beijing are the ones that are actually accusing Trump of doing the same thing.
Exactly. Well, the title of your article, published August 28th, is Diana West's Red Thread. That's THREAD, Tango Hotel Romeo Echo Alpha Delta. Diana West's Red Thread. And, of course, that's available to read at your website at jrnyquist.com, isn't it?
Yes. I think the thing that people should take away is the fact that we are under an intensive assault. We're engaged in a war. And I used an expression in the article that I find very useful, which is from Soviet literature of the 1960s and 70s especially. The Soviets in their books would often refer to the idea that we are living in the era of the transition from capitalism to socialism. And that has a specific meaning. It means they're going to bring the Western capitalist world into the socialist camp, which is, of course, the socialist bloc, all the countries that are controlled by communists. And this is what we see. If you just look around you, you see that everything is being moved to the left. Everyone is expected to move further and further to the left. And if you don't, you're accused of being a racist or you're ostracized in some way. And this is part of the mechanisms they've been creating for the past 4 or 5 decades to make this happen.
Well, it is. That's very true. I know firsthand it's very true. And your article here is well done. Should give people, I believe, motivation to further their personal education, to get a copy of Diana's book. If you could get Diana's contact information to me, Jeff, by email, I do want to have her on my show here. I think she really needs to be on my show and talk about her book, don't you?
Oh yeah, sure. I'm sure she'd love to come on your show.
Yeah. Let's do that. Let's make that happen because I know she'd get a warm reception here from all our audience. These connections that you're making are not known by hardly anybody in the general American public, are they?
No, not really. I mean, I presented perhaps the most sensational little bit of proof that Diana dug up. She very cleverly follows the tweets of various people on the left and in the Democratic Party. And she found this Ed Baumgartner tweet, which she reproduces in the book, which is an astonishing tweet. Baumgartner is a person who worked for Fusion GPS as a Russia expert. He is probably a protege of Nellie Orr, who is a neo-Stalinist scholar who's kind of defends, in a way, she uses scholarship to defend what Stalin did back in the 1930s in the Ukraine famine. And Diana basically reproduces this tweet by Baumgartner, in which Baumgartner takes he takes Dennis Prager to task for saying that the Western press is a greater threat to freedom than Russia. And Baumgartner, praising Russia, denies that Russia's not a threat. Basically says that, oh, Prager, you probably think Russia is a white nationalist homeland, a white nationalist Christian homeland, and it is wonderfully far from, I think it's his exact words. And this is sort of an admission that Baumgartner knows the real game, and he's laughing, he's mocking Prager for not really knowing what's going on, not really knowing that Russia is only pretending to be led by a nationalist and a Christian, and that in reality it is wonderfully far from. And Baumgartner definitely is one of these people who's a communist here, an American who is fighting to make us a socialist country, and he's praising Russia as wonderfully far from what the conservatives are led to believe it is. So he's really kind of laughing at us for being fooled by Russian propaganda, and he's praising Russia for its task of supporting this socialist agenda when everyone thinks Russia's not.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm curious. The graphic you have with your article features two book covers, neither one of which is Diana West's book titled Red Thread. You've got one title. The book is The New Politics of Sex by Stephen Baskerville, and the other one is The Essence of Edward Gibbon on Christianity. What's the significance of these two books that you have in your graphic here, sir?
I'm going to be doing book reviews of both of the books because both of those books are very important as far as what Diana West is writing about. Because the Stephen Baskerville's book on the politics of sex is about how feminism is used by the left to destroy our society from within, and he has very carefully outlined how extensive the destruction is. We've talked on this show about no-fault divorce, and he talks about the destructiveness of divorce in general, and then about how the feminists are using the family courts to destroy the society, and how this kind of has evolved into a new form of politics, which the left uses to empower itself and to divide and conquer the political spectrum. It's a fascinating book. He's worked for a long time, Baskerville, on these subjects. He wrote a book about how the family courts are used to destroy marriages and to financially destroy couples and to harm children. So I got very interested in this new book of his, which is not receiving the attention it should. As far as Edward Gibbon's, the essential Edward Gibbon on Christianity, we are living, I believe, that the era of the transition from capitalism to socialism is similar in some sense of the era in the late Roman Empire of the transition from paganism to Christianity, because we're seeing the same markers. That is, the existing religion was being overthrown, and this is what's happening to us today. Christianity now is in the position of being overthrown by socialism, which is in fact a new religion. And it's amazing how many of the markers of what happened then are repeating themselves now. And I think it's one of those amazing parallels of history that we can understand how critically dangerous this present time is in terms of an active effort to change the belief system of millions of people, and to do it by taking over the government.
Well, the Romans, and we're talking about the period of approximately 200 to 400 A.D., give or take. The Romans were very literate men and women. They recorded in great detail every aspect of what was going on in their society, and so very detailed written records exist of what took place during that period of time in Rome, aren't there?
Yes. Ammianus Marcellinus, who was one of the latter Roman historians, he wrote a book which is quite interesting in what it details. He described the passion for this popular music that occurred in the 4th century. He said that they had water organs. Now, we know what an organ is, but we don't know what kind of musical instrument a water organ is. But they would fill stadiums with people for these, they're described like rock concerts. The people would go nuts, and they would fill the stadiums, and the water, these musical instruments would be as big as carriages, if you can imagine a musical instrument the size of a carriage. And he talked about the libraries in Rome were like tombs permanently shut. These are his words. And that people would go racing down the thoroughfares in their chariots, trampling people down, and that the chariot races were all that mattered to people. It was an entertainment culture. People weren't serious in their intellectual pursuits. And of course, we know about how people had abortions and treated children, and how the birth rate was falling as it is now. The pagans, many of them would expose their children by the river put them by the river, so when the river went up, it would take the children, the babies. These are babies that they didn't want, and the Christians would come and rescue these babies. The destruction of pagan civilization at the time, a kind of demoralization occurred, and Christianity then was basically taking up the space, filling it up. And what the Orthodox Christians did was they got next to the emperors. They got political power. And Christianity was a religion of the middle class in the cities when it was first coming. You know, we have the blue state, red state phenomenon now. Socialism, the socialist voters are in the cities. And they had this, it's a very interesting parallel between the word pagan and redneck. Basically, a pagan is an ignorant country dweller, which is the name the Christians gave to the pagans. The flyover states here, the rednecks, they're the ignorant country dweller of today. It's fashionable to be a socialist today. So the pattern, even the way the new religion, socialism, spreads is similar to the way Christianity initially spread in the Roman Empire. And the way they refer in derogatory terms to those adhering to the older faith are also present today in our politics and our way of speaking. So we are in grave danger of having our religion taken away from us by a new religion. And I do say socialism is a new religion. It has all the markers of it, especially this parallel with this late Roman period. And I think people, you know, I'm going to write more about this because I think it's a very important sociological, historical marker of where we're standing now, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, Jeff. It does make sense. And these historical parallels are important. They need to be observed and made note of. So hopefully we can see where it went 2,000 years ago and avoid some of the mistakes that were made 2,000 years ago right now, can't we?
Yeah. I mean, to know where you are is to be informed as to what you need to do. And I think we definitely don't realize. I think it's interesting how when you read history and you say, why didn't the people understand, where they were? Why didn't they understand what was going on? And it's quite amazing to find that they don't apparently understand these things. Well, one of the benefits of reading history is you can understand where you are in the process.
Absolutely.
And that is, I think, where we are.
Well, that's this is information people need. You cannot possibly make intelligent decisions unless you know where you are right now, what's happened in the past, and this is great intelligence, quite frankly. And I hope people will, when you write your articles on these two books, that people will follow up on them. And if I can nudge you along to take less than 4 months to get these new articles published, I'll certainly do so.
Yeah, well, I've been reading and researching a lot, and I had a couple of other projects that didn't pan out. So that took a great deal of time. And so it's writing is not always an easy thing. And I think if people were more or less interested in what was happening around in a slightly more I don't know how you'd say it, a slightly more detailed way.
Hold that thought, Jeff. We got a break. We'll be right back.
Tired of being lied to by mass media? It's growing more and more apparent today that news is received less and less through standard media outlets. Even with a growing audience every day, RBN is beginning to direct more efforts into social media. Social media and the use of the internet is fast becoming the primary source of people for news, regardless of demographic. RBN has set out to provide some of the best news on the internet through republicbroadcasting.org, and also has begun to use the tools to our advantage by way of social media. Republic Broadcasting is now operating a Facebook page to function as yet another avenue to have our collective voice reach new audiences across not only America, but across the globe as well. The Facebook page features not only news, but also an RBN player to listen to our broadcasts. Get involved by visiting facebook.com/Republic Broadcasting and liking our page and share it with your friends and family, because you can handle the truth.
Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here on Wednesday, the 4th of September. It is September. And we're going on a cruise. It will be a romantic cruise. It will be a fun cruise. We'll be on the largest ship they make, the Royal Caribbean Harmony of the Seas. Basically a luxury hotel on the ocean. That's what these are. Multiple restaurants, lots of fun. We'll get together every day for some educational exchanges of information back and forth with myself and Leon Green. We may have some of the other Republic Broadcasting guests here with us. Get all the details at my website at thelibertyman.com. Or if you don't have internet access, give my cruise director, Betsy Murphy, a call. She'll mail you a nice full-color brochure. Betsy's telephone number is 636-530-9502. I say again, 636-530-9502. Visiting with Jeff Nyquist. His website's linked on my webpage on my link section. His website's jrnyquist.com. Taking your questions, calls, and comments here at Republic Broadcasting at 800-313-9443. Let's continue, Jeff.
Yeah. Where were we? We were talking about Gibbon and Stephen Baskerville's book,
right? Right.
And the importance of the changes in terms of one of the things the Chinese did a study some years ago to say, why is Western civilization so successful? What is the reason why the West prevailed so much? And their study came to an interesting conclusion. They concluded that Christianity was the key to the success of the West. And they wanted to know exactly how that worked. That's how serious the communists are about, discovering our strengths and our weaknesses. So when you see something like feminism aimed at, and homosexual marriage, you say, well, what is it really aimed at? What are they trying to do? Their ultimate aim is against Christianity and to break up the Western Christian family and what Marx and Engels called the bourgeois family, and then to get a hold of the children, to change them, to give them the new religion, so that the parents do not transmit their culture and their beliefs to their children. And that's where feminism comes in, because if you break up the man from the woman, and then the child are kind of lost to the state in that process, and that's what they want.
That is what they want, and that's what they're getting. You and I have talked about this before, and how harmful no-fault divorce has been to this country. I was just getting into the legal system myself back in 72, 73. No-fault divorce was being implemented in the 50 states, and it dramatically changed the entire culture of this country. A man or a woman.
It's amazing how against the Constitution it is. Because the process of the family court is basically you can lose your property, you can lose your rights without due process. There's no jury, no trial of your peers. You don't have to have committed any offense, and yet you can have your property taken away from you. That is, it's amazing that this has been allowed to develop the way it has.
I haven't thought about this. I never considered that a person could have a jury trial in a divorce, because that would be the only way to have due process, would be to have a jury trial in a divorce, which I've never seen that happen personally.
Yeah, well, that's the way it was originally supposed to happen, is that you could only get a divorce if your spouse had basically breach of contract,
marital misconduct, right?
Yeah, marital misconduct. So you had to have done something wrong. And you would have to prove that in order to get your divorce.
Right.
With no fault divorce, you just say, "Oh, he doesn't love me anymore," and that's it.
Well, actually the term is irreconcilable differences. Now, that's like trying to grab a handful of smoke, knowing what that means and how to define it. Irreconcilable differences. At least that's what they use in Missouri, and that's almost all petitions for divorce. That's what's written there, which 9 out of 10, by the way, are filed by women, in case you don't know.
Yes. Baskerville goes into that, and it is, people think that this is, people have often not understood that if marriage is based on a feeling, and your feelings change all the time, and you can get a divorce whenever your feelings turn to a certain, right now I don't like my husband or whatever, or I don't like my wife. If you are allowed to get a divorce on no real grounds at all, that's going to increase the number of divorces dramatically. And if the person had maybe waited, a few weeks or a couple months, I don't know why I felt that way.
Hold that thought, Jeff. We got a break. We'll be right back.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. We have a special promotion going on at Republic Broadcasting. This is a fundraiser for Republic Broadcasting involving the Energy Cleaner. Mail me a postcard. My address is at my website at thelibertyman.com. We pick a postcard every other Thursday. When your postcard is drawn out, you get to buy an energy cleaner for $215 instead of $285, $70 discount. $200 goes to Republic Broadcasting. You also get a 10% discount on my mattress pads. So get those postcards in, put your name, your telephone number, your email address on there, and when your postcard is drawn, you get to get an energy cleaner for $215 instead of $285. Mattress pads, 10% off. Help us out at Republic Broadcasting and help yourself to get an energy cleaner at a deep discount. It's a win-win situation for everybody. We hope you can get these postcards in soon. Thank you very much.
It's happening, ladies and gentlemen. We here at RBN are working with Front Sight Firearms Training Institute to bring our audience the best in combat, tactical, and defensive firearms training. Whether you're a private citizen who is new to firearms, or you have a concealed weapon permit and want a level of training that surpasses what you've received from your local gun range, Front Sight provides priceless education and skills taught by seasoned law enforcement, military, and private citizen instructors to levels that far exceed law enforcement and and military standard. With nearly 1 million responsible citizens trained from every town, city, and state from across the United States, Front Sight has bolstered the Patriot movement to a whole new level. Contact Dan Sutterfield by phone at 573-762-2356 or 573-465-2356 or shoot him an email at domedan, DOMEDAN, at hotmail.com. This is a limited time opportunity. Don't miss it.
All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. J.R. Moore here on Wednesday, the 4th of September. If you scroll down the right side of my homepage at thelibertyman.com, you'll see in bright red letters 2 words, Red Dawn. We've got 2 interviews there, one with Jeff Nyquist, the other with Command Sergeant Major Dan Page. I interviewed these 2 gentlemen back-to-back on the 22nd and 23rd days of May this year. This is some powerful, powerful information. It fits hand in glove with what we're talking about right now, of course, and I encourage everybody to listen to it. We're going to need healthy, strong Americans for what's coming at us. We will. Not that we don't anyway, but we especially will soon. And that's where the energy cleaner comes in. If you want to wake up refreshed, energized, pain-free, like I do every morning, well, get yourself an energy cleaner. Pretty simple as that. Can't hurt you. We have people with pacemakers and various implants and so forth, health conditions. The energy cleaner can't possibly hurt you. So don't worry about that. $285 shipping included. Keep in mind, I offer a 90-day money-back guarantee. That's what I do. I offer a 90-day money-back guarantee. You can place your order right there at my website for the energy cleaner and the mattress pad to go with it right there at my website using PayPal, MasterCard, Visa. You can send me a check or a money order. My address is at my website. You can call my toll-free order line 24 hours a day to place your order. Here it is, 800-592-9543. I say again, 800-592-9543. Visiting with Jeff Nyquist, his website is jrnyquist.com. It is linked to my links page at libertyman.com. Taking your questions, calls, and comments at 800-313-9443. Let's continue, Jeff.
Yeah. So I wanted to return a second to this idea of the transition from capitalism to socialism, which is something everybody who watches the news can see, especially now when we look at these Democratic candidates for president and how really far to the left. I mean, the Green New Deal is the most wacky far-left thing that has ever been proposed, I think, in a presidential contest. And the fact that they would come out with it now, that they think the public would buy it, the fact that people aren't fleeing the Democratic Party by the millions after hearing it, is quite a marker as to where we are right now.
Well, it may have pretty great appeal at the grade school level. I think by junior high school, at least half the students would figure out that it was wacky and wouldn't work. Who are they trying to appeal to anyway?
Well, they're trying to appeal to this new constituency of the left that they have, and that's who they are. You know who they are. I mean, imagine all these politicians who are doing this are on the left themselves. They're adults, and they, you say, well, do they really believe this? Well, they believe it enough to actually be saying it without embarrassment up on a stage when they're running for the highest office of the land. That's really something.
It is something.
That's what's so surprising to somebody like myself. I mean, I'm 61. You're older. You've seen even more than I have. I mean, have you ever seen anything so crazy and irresponsible out of the mouth of somebody running for such a responsible position?
No, it sounds like something that 40 years ago would have been a Saturday Night Live routine. To get people to laugh as something off the charts crazy that would be very funny on Saturday Night Live. but it's not in the realm of comedy. It's in the realm of real political discourse, and it's hard to give credibility to something like that publicly by repeating it and giving it credibility. I know as President Trump does not lend any credibility to the Green New Deal, does he?
No, I mean it's like self-parody. It's like they're almost making fun of themselves. If you wanted to stand up and make a ridiculous, kind of impression of these people, you would say the exact same things that they're actually seriously proposing now, which is, it's amazing.
It is amazing.
So I think, yeah.
I listen to National Public Radio as a matter of opposition research, and this commentator, NPR commentator yesterday, was talking about how fossil fuels will run out. Well, it will be centuries before fossil fuels run out. Of course, they never will run out because they self-generate, which is why the oil fields in Pennsylvania that are about 120 years old and older are still producing oil because they regenerate themselves. So the whole thing is based on fantasy, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it is. I can tell you a story. I wrote for Financial Sense for 12 years, and when the peak oil hysteria was going on, my boss, who was a very smart financial investor, he said, "You've got to read these peak oil books, And I wrote against peak oil, and he really wasn't very pleased with me. And I explained to him, I said, look, capitalism innovates, and whenever we have this problem, we find a way around it, and the market will solve it. And, this is the faith in capitalism that if you watch what capitalism does, and of course, if I called a friend who was a geologist at the time, and I said to him, he was a geophysicist, actually, and he'd worked for the major oil companies. And I said, well, what do you think of peak oil? And he said, it's nonsense. There's more oil under the ground than we could possibly calculate. That's what he told me.
Right.
This was in like 2008 or whenever, 7-8, when this peak oil thing was going on. And of course, he was right. I mean, the market solved it, and there's more oil underground, and we discovered it. And
well, actually, by then, and I was doing presentations. I was on a nationwide speaking tour for the Prophecy Club, and people were coming up to me holding these peak oil books in their hands, and they were just out of their minds with fear that everything's going to fall apart because of the peak oil fantasy. By then, however, by the time these books were being published that you're referring to and I'm talking about, the petroleum companies had basically stopped looking for oil because they had enough oil to use for a century already. Why bother looking for more?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's what people don't understand, who don't really follow how capitalism works. There's all this demonizing of the oil companies. Wait a minute, all that evil in the world, supposedly, so that you could have cheap fuel to run your car in your house? Come on, give me a break. This is where there's a difference between a benign private institution that is providing a service and, the danger of using government power to acquire something. And the real problem in the world is these national oil companies that are playing games with the price of oil. People blame the oil companies are doing it to us again. No, it's these national oil companies controlled by socialist governments that are trying to squeeze us.
This past week, I saw for myself the first time I ever saw a place for electric automobiles to get charged up electricity in the state of Missouri, and I thought to myself, these people buy these cars, they think they're helping the planet. Well, that electricity at this charging station comes from burning coal. That's where it comes from. So their electric car they're so proud of is actually a coal burner, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the irony of it. And coal, of course, is the dirtiest fossil fuel that you can use. But still, in America, we have ways of cleaning those smokestacks to keep the stuff out of the air, unlike China and these other countries. But yeah, I mean, the modern capitalism you talk about pollution. Which is the biggest polluter, Communist China or the United States? Well, it's Communist China by far. They're destroying their environment under the socialist system.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, there's all this concern about what's in the oceans. It turns out there's two rivers, one from China and one from Africa, that produce almost all the debris that's in the oceans, and the percent coming from the United States is a tiny, tiny fraction, maybe 3%, if that. So we got all the United States changing our habits, going to paper straws, for example, instead of plastic straws, to mitigate a problem that's mostly a problem coming out of China and Africa. But it's we're kind of straying afield here. The main topic, of course, being the infiltration of our government at the highest levels by communist agents to make things more compatible with socialism and communism. Correct?
Yes, and you can identify those agents by what they're promoting. For example, global warming, trying to block something like an oil or natural gas production, trying to shut down coal production in the United States. When you see politicians doing that, and Obama was one of them, promoting things that will destroy our energy, because our economy is based on energy to a large extent, then you know that it's a sabotage operation, and they're working for the socialist camp, they're working for the enemies, and they're trying to degrade the United States right there in plain view. And that's what people have to understand. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I regard both Bush presidents, Clinton and Obama, as basically all advocating the same agenda. The transitions between those administrations was seamless. There was no policy changes of any consequence between all four administrations, wasn't there, Jeff?
It did seem like they were carrying out the same policies, yes.
That's because they weren't carrying out the same policies.
Yeah. Yeah. In foreign policy especially, I mean, the military policy and the foreign policy, that is, I think what people also don't realize is the extent to which getting involved in wars in countries like Iraq and Afghanistan are something that the communist bloc or the socialist camp has actively wanted to promote. They want us in wars. They want us to become morally and financially exhausted, fighting these countries that have endless supplies of people to expand. Russia sends them weapons, or China sends them weapons, and it's a fraction of what we have to spend to fight. And then when our soldiers are injured, tragically killed, it's not only the cost in terms of the human tragedy, but there's the enormous financial cost to replace limbs and to take care of people who've been seriously injured, because we do take care of our people. We do not let our people, just die, or just sit in a wheelchair drooling on themselves. We want to help them. So we do spend the resources. In Russia and China, if you're one of these veterans of the Chechen War or some expedition into the Third World, and you get wounded, that's your tough luck. The state's not going to go out of its way for you.
No, their veterans are not given anywhere near the treatment that our veterans are. But you're right. The consistency between those four administrations on foreign policy and these never-ending wars was very seamless, very, very seamless. I don't lay all the blame at the feet of Obama. I include both Bushes and President Clinton. I remember President Clinton sitting I think he was on the edge of the Grand Canyon when he signed legislation making coal mining off limits in some vast areas. And that was clearly part of all this, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. To cripple the U.S., the U.S. has, I think, the greatest coal reserves in the world, don't we?
We got all the coal we need. I mean, I don't know if they're the biggest in the world, but we certainly have all the coal we need.
I think that U.S. has huge coal reserves, and to deny us the use of that in the event that there was a shortage of oil would be like sabotaging our options. And, of course, now we're the number one energy producer in the world. We produce more because of the way we produce oil now. People said, oh, America will never, we're producing more oil than Saudi Arabia right now, more oil than Russia, who were the leading oil producers, 10, 12 years ago. So this is a very significant thing.
Well, it is.
And it's really messed up the Russian and Chinese calculations because
it has.
Expected us to have. Yeah.
Right. They expect us to have what?
Yeah. They expected us to be. They expected to have us over a barrel, so to speak, an oil barrel by this time, because they were going to dominate the oil, Russia's production. They were going to cause probably a rebellion in Saudi Arabia. They'd already caused the trouble in Iraq. They had Venezuela,
Right. Well, we fooled them, didn't we?
Yeah, capitalism.
The free market,
definitely.
The free market when it's turned loose is phenomenal, and that's what basically happened during World War II. The free market stepped up to the plate to manufacture the aircraft, the boats, the weapons of war, the tanks and trucks, and so forth. I was told that, I read that Adolf Hitler, when he was told the production of American aircraft, said to his advisors, "This can't be true. You need to double check that." And then they told him that's exactly what they're doing. They are building this many aircraft. It's hard, looking back on World War II was less than 4 years long. Our involvement in World War II, 3 years and a few months. And what was done during that period of time in terms of manufacturing was absolutely phenomenal, wasn't it?
Oh, it was. In fact, I can tell you the more detailed story about that. Walter Schellenberg was the head of SS Foreign Intelligence, and he was asked to use his spies to check on American, this was right after Pearl Harbor, check on American aircraft production. And he gave astounding figures, tens of thousands of planes. And when he brought it, he was summoned to the Chancellery where Goering and Hitler were. And Goering had a copy of Schellenberg's report, and he shoved it in Schellenberg's hand, and he said, "This is nonsense." And he said, "They can't produce this much." And, of course, some years later, Goering's cell at Nuremberg was right across the hall from Schellenberg's cell. And they brought Goering back to his cell one day. Schellenberg was looking out his window, and then Goering got in, and he saw Goering come up to the window of his door, and he said, "Hey, Schellenberg, you were right."
Well, it always comes down to logistics, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, it's the thing that why capitalism, yeah.
Here's our break. We'll be right back. All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. J.R. Moore here on Wednesday, the 4th of September. I want to encourage everybody to go to Jeff's website and read his current article, just published a couple of days ago, and get his books. His books are on sale at Amazon.com. Read his books. The Origins of the Fourth World War, I think you'll find fascinating, as I did. Jeff, we got about 3 minutes here to get some information out to these folks.
Yes, well, the capitalist system and freedom are the best possible systems for, and has made America great. And the reason that Trump is making America great again is because he's making us more free by repealing the legislation of Obama that was restricting the economy. And, of course, it's because they're in the socialist camp. They want America to be weakened. So all these measures, they hurt us. They hurt the country. They hurt our ability to project military force to defend the free world. And so we need to be aware of this, that the issue of socialism versus capitalism is a very important issue.
It is.
This is the issue of the attack on our culture.
Right. Well, so many other issues have a direct linkage to this issue. What's the public school system, what's going on with the economy, what's going on in many aspects. Even, I don't know this for a fact, but I would suspect we'd find the communists are against football. How American is football? I mean, so people need to educate themselves, and other things will fall into place and make sense. Don't make sense otherwise once they understand it's right. Right, Jeff?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, in terms of, preparing young men for the hardships of war, football is a kind of a game that resembles war in a way. And it creates a kind of, it helps to cultivate the spirit of competition and manly virtue. So, of course, we have a fascination for that. That would be a healthy thing. It wouldn't be unhealthy.
Right, exactly. I agree 100%. I've seen, with my youngest grandson, I've seen football tremendously help this young man in his growing up. And, of course, the older grandson is looking at, already being talked to by NFL scouts. But football has helped tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of soft city boys become tough young men. That's the purpose of football, is to turn soft city boys into tough young men. And that's what it does very effectively, doesn't it, Jeff?
Yeah, it does. And, of course, if you've ever been in military training, especially in the Marines or Special Forces, you know that how tough you have to be, how much your body has to adjust and strengthen itself, because
quite frankly,
if you are
nothing I ever did in Special Forces came close to summer football practice. Nothing.
Yeah, I have heard my football friends say that. Yeah, I didn't do football, but I did boot camp in the Marines, and those football guys, I saw them puking out there every day, when they were running and stuff. And I thought
it can be tough.
Wow,
Jeff, thank you, sir. We'll have you back next Wednesday.
Take care.
That's it for the day. Get your medical supplies, your energy cleaner, your essential oils now while you can, your firearms ammunition. Never, ever give your guns. Please do a fun, safe, productive day. God bless America.